the Regional Advisory Group for CITA International for North America. We have an hour here or so of trying to introduce you to CITA itself as an organization, as well as the Carnegie Mellon study. Next, please. The Regional Advisory Group is covering everything in North America that I'm responsible for. Next, I'd like to now introduce the president of CITA globally, and that is Gerhard Müller here to my left.
Thank you, Peter, and also very warm welcome from my side. I really want to introduce what CITA is and what we are doing next, please. So to describe CITA in a nutshell is we make roads safer and cleaner every day, everywhere, impartially and responsibly. Next, please. I just want to tell you what we are doing. So we believe that sustainable mobility makes the world better, and sustainable means that cars are as safe and as clean as possible. And we are the impartial partner, and this is very, very important because CITA members are authorities or authorized companies around the world to enable programs and policies for safe and clean vehicles. Next, please. So CITA is an NGO located in Brussels, and we have over 140 members in more than 50 countries around the world. And we are committed to whole life vehicle compliance. So we guarantee that vehicles, once they are registered, before they are registered, they are safe and clean, and during the whole life until they are scrapped. So our industry has more than 180,000 employees around the world. We have more than 20 events every year to educate and to explain what we are doing and to change experiences around the world. And we do more than 200 million vehicle inspections per year. So we are very experienced in vehicle inspections. Next, please. So we are worldwide active. We have 5 regional groups. One is here in the US, North America, guided by Peter. And then we have another group in Asia, Australasia, Central and South America, in Europe and North America. This is important because we try to find solutions for the specific need of the region. And the needs of Africa, for example, are quite different to the needs for safe and clean vehicles compared to the US, for example. Next, please. Yeah. So I mentioned the word whole life vehicle compliance, and this is important for us because we have new vehicles which are normally very safe and very clean once they are registered. And there are different vehicle inspections and tests like type approval tests and conformity of production tests to guarantee that the new vehicles are safe and clean. But then we have the life of the vehicle, which means, for example, in the US, if I'm informed right, the average age is 12 or 13 years. So many things can happen to the vehicle once it's used. And you see here some of these impacts, maintenance, crashes, breakdowns of the vehicle, and all these things which could happen to a vehicle during the life can have a negative impact on the safety of the vehicle and emission behavior of the vehicle. So we are convinced we need special types of inspections like roadside inspection, periodic technical inspection, or in-service performance to guarantee that vehicles have a minimum level, keep a minimum level of safety and environmental protection. And last but not least, also once vehicles are exported in other countries, we try to guarantee that these vehicles are not scrapped or not crash vehicles, but have also a minimum level if vehicles are exported from countries like Europe or North America or Asia to countries like India. Next, please. So one example how vehicles could be inspected in a quick and simple and cheap manner is vehicle inspection, like a periodic vehicle inspection. So the key elements are the lights of the vehicle, the brakes of the vehicle, shock absorber tester. Is becoming more and more important also to read out OBD data, especially if we think about automatic driving vehicles. So we need information from the vehicle and to have access to data. And last but not least, emission test is relevant to vehicle inspection. So this is a brief introduction of what we are doing next, please, and how vehicle inspection normally looks like. So we are organized in regional groups, as I introduced already. These groups meet once a year, hosted by the chair, and are open to all members. Then we have international conferences. The next one is for Africa, it's in Cape Town, November, for example, where we invite political decision makers, stakeholders to discuss about safe vehicles and clean vehicles. We organize workshops and presentations to exchange information to give a review what's going on around the world, because at least we have all the same problems to make cars safer and cleaner. So, and many people around the world are trying to do so. And we have learned from COVID crisis that also very enough, very helpful and an easy way to bring people around the world together. Yeah, this was it from my side. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Gerhard. Now we're going to have a short video from a gentleman by the name of John Firm, the chairman of the Mechanical Ops Committee for the Automotive Service Association and Texas Shop Owners.
Why I think they're a positive thing. The first thing is what's expected on the car for safety issues. Tires, brakes, lights, and windshield wiper blades. These 4 items are very critical in our industry. Without brakes, the vehicle won't stop. Without tread and tire tread, in wet or icy conditions, you have no traction, so you'll slip and slide. And without lights at night, nobody can see you. And the windshield wiper blades, they're a must for the rain. But you can't see where you're going hardly, especially when it's dark. The issues that I see in my shop, people coming in, are tires. We sell a bunch of tires because they're worn out, the treads are going. And when we do the tires, we look at the brakes. And usually brakes are about 30% gone, or they're 30% left. One or the other, we hardly ever see in between. If the state inspection program didn't exist in the state of Texas, I can see the unemployment rate going up. Just because the amount of inspectors we have that are employed that are inspecting these cars. The other thing I can see is fatality accidents. We don't have these cars inspected, make sure everything's up to grade. We're going to have some, it's going to be bad. You know, I'm thinking about would the repairs be made if somebody wasn't looking at them? I don't think so. I think if people are not having their cars inspected on a regular basis annually, they don't care if the lights work. They don't care if they have windshield wiper. They don't want to spend the money. They don't want to fix this stuff. My name is John Firm, Firm Automotive.
All right. So at this point, we're going to go into a small panel between Gerhard and Andy McIntosh, who's the president of Opus International, and I'll ask a few questions to them. So first one is to Andy. What does vehicle safety inspection look like across the United States?
So today, the safety inspection programs in the United States are relatively, I would say, non-penetrated across the state. So there's really only 15 states today that do any form of safety inspection. These safety inspections were developed in the 50s and 60s. The tests themselves haven't really changed much, really not utilizing much technology today. But they're effective. They can be very effective programs today. And excuse me, one of the obvious things that has changed in the last 50 years is the advent of additional technology, safety technology, for example, which is hard to visually inspect, just say. But as we just heard in the video, there are a lot of aspects of vehicles that are very important for safety that can be visually inspected. Incidentally, our company Opus is involved in the collection of a lot of that data today. It's uploaded by a technician who's doing this video visual inspection and then uploading it to a database and centralized and collected by the state that's performing that inspection.
What do states want really inspected?
Typically, as we just heard in the video, windshield wipers, lights, brakes, tires, the wear items, the things that tend to fail. But I just would say that with level 1 and 2 autonomous vehicle safety systems in place, those are not capable of being inspected by all programs really in the United States today. There's no mechanism for that.
Great, thank you. And Gerhard, internationally, how many countries have programs?
I don't know exactly the number, how many countries, but I can tell you that the vehicle inspection becomes more and more important for many countries around the world. If you look at Europe or Asia, China, vehicle inspection on a permanent basis is mandatory. So in Europe, for example, the vehicles need to be inspected every year or every second year, and we have the same in China or in Korea. And what is interesting also, for example, low income countries in South America and Africa have already introduced really properly working vehicle inspection system. Like Chile, for example, they're doing really a good job in vehicle inspection.
What type of trends do you see from these programs?
The trends I see is that, especially if we want to fulfill the goals we have, we need crucially key goals around the world. It's a kind of vision zero, so that maybe in 20 years, no fatality will occur anymore in road traffic. So this is a vision zero, and also emission zero, that vehicles will not pollute anymore the environment. And to fulfill these programs, more and more states around the world are starting vehicle safety and inspection programs to fulfill these. This is a key element.
Anything else either of you would like to say?
Yeah, maybe just to mention some figures about vehicle inspection. There are many studies. Look at the CITA webpage, CITA.org. No matter if the study was made in Turkey, in Spain, in Costa Rica, many countries around the world, all these studies prove very, very positive impact of vehicle inspection efficiency. So it reduces fatalities, reduces accidents, and it reduces pollution.
Good. All right. Well, at this point, what we're going to do is pass the microphone down to Dr. Scott Matthews, who will give an introduction and brief explanation of the study that CITA paid for by Carnegie Mellon University. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Peter. In one slide to summarize the study, and then we'll talk in a bit more detail. Andy had mentioned in his discussion that there's sort of a patchwork system of states in the United States. Currently, 15 states of the 50 have periodic safety inspections, as shown in this graphic, which of course is a small share of the 12 states, but tend to be some bigger states, and so overall there's slightly more than 23% of vehicles in the U.S. that are being inspected. Next slide, please. And that's just again for context. So as Peter said, several years ago, we began a deep data-driven study to try to better understand the connection between states that had safety inspection programs and the overall effect on roadway fatalities. And as you'll see, we did this with a data set, an available data set over a very long time period. Next slide, please. For context, and some of these numbers have not been mentioned yet, so I will spend a minute on them. Of course, roadway fatalities and crashes are a major cause of death in the US. There are about 6 million total crashes, of which about 1% of those are fatal, leading to almost 40,000 deaths per year. When NHTSA looks at the total cost of those 6 million crashes, which is everything from property damage to vehicle damage to medical expenses of those involved in the crashes, it's a massive amount of money. Right? The total amount from all those crashes is $750 billion, and that number, of course, is slightly out of date. When we think about what states and the federal government have historically done to try to improve roadway safety, when we think of what they've done in terms of speed limits, access, and other things, those are high-level roadway level programs. When it comes to vehicles themselves, the federal and state governments have tried to do things like require seatbelt use and vehicle standards, trying to put emerging great life-saving technologies into vehicles such as anti-lock brakes or ABS systems, things like, and now we see emerging low-level 1 and 2 crash avoidance kind of systems. But of course, those are only applying to new vehicles. So there are people who say, you know, the fleet of vehicles is, the vehicles have never been safer. That may be true for newly purchased vehicles, but it's increasingly not true, as Darren showed in his slide about as vehicles progress over their life. So the important thing is to keep vehicles safe over the life of the vehicles. And safety inspection programs are a key way that that has been done for many years in the states that have done it. Those IM programs are exactly tailored to try to do that. And what they're trying to do is prevent fatalities that come from insufficient maintenance of vehicles. We talked about sort of expendables in the video and in these comments, tires, brakes, lights, et cetera. There's some states that have many more items that are inspected, suspensions, chassis, et cetera. But these ones I keep mentioning tend to be the big ones. Next slide, please. We talked about the states that have programs, and this might just be a visual that is relevant and interesting for you, and I will explain it because it probably looks like a shark jumping out of the water. But what it's showing is on the bottom axis is time, and you can see that the first state inspection program came in the late 1920s, and the number of states with programs is increasing. And you can see the actual states, right? So there's the 8 states on the bottom that started early and have maintained programs forever. And you can see as states were added, such as Utah, Colorado, New Jersey, DC in the next set, that some of those have ended in the past decade or so. You can see how long they've been in existence. But as we said, there's about 15 current states, and that's 50% less than about 40 years ago or so. So this is something that was very popular at the state level at some point in time, has become less popular recently. Next slide, please. So as has been said, and one of the reasons we're here, it was important to try to do a study of the effectiveness of these safety inspection programs in the US. There are mentioned studies from around the world, Turkey or other places that have showed whether these programs have benefits, and we wanted to do the same thing here. There have in fact been studies done in the US in the past trying to look at this particular issue. Been going on for a long time, almost 50 years. However, as you'll see, and I'm trying to summarize in the next couple of slides, the common thing that you would see is that the studies done over time have either been for a small number of states, perhaps with available data, or a short period of time, 5, maybe 10 years. And one of the goals that we had in doing a study was to get past both of those general constraints, to try to do a study that was all-encompassing as well as over a long period of time, so that it could be more robust and more broadly applicable. Next slide, please. And hit the next button too. So what you would see in terms of what I was talking about in your slide about what all kinds of studies have been done, you can sort of see them color-coded on the right-hand side, right? The blue, the green, the purple, the red, in this list of studies that have been done in the past. You can see that there were some of these studies that were focused on just a single state or a particular state, right? There was a study on Huntsville, Alabama, from a long time ago that's still from 1979 people talk about as indicative of whether safety inspection programs are good or bad. And what we also see in this slide is that generally speaking, you would think from looking at this literature that it's unclear what the overall effect would be, because the first row shows the subset of studies over time that have said that we think these programs do reduce fatalities. There's also some studies that have said they don't, and there's been studies that were inconclusive. Can you click one more time, please? So, as I said, we wanted to get past that and try to deal with, to overcome those challenges of the past, to do an unbiased study that was reducible. All of the data that we used, the source data is publicly available on the raw data we ended up using for the studies available, as well as all of the statistical analysis and code. And what we did was use the largest publicly available data set on road fatalities, which covers all 50 states and DC over a 44-year period, 1975 to 2018. And we hope that by being all-encompassing in both time and space, that it allows people to really fully broadly understand what we think the benefits are of these programs and to help quantitatively estimate that benefit. Next slide, please. So that database that I mentioned that we use and that we believe is useful is called the FARS database. This is something that NHTSA has been doing for a long period of time. The fatality analysis reporting system, you can see a sort of graphic of it in the left-hand corner. This database is intended to record all fatal crashes in the US. And so it's a very, very comprehensive, again, fatal crashes. There are many non-fatal crashes that happen that are not centrally reported to any place. And so just to give you a sense of how this data set works, right? So a fatal crash happens, the state is obligated to have a record in the FARS data set, and someone is tasked with making sure that the crash is looked at, data is gathered to sufficiently describe the crash. And this data set itself has individual records for every crash, every vehicle involved in the crash, including sort of more than one vehicle, as well as every person. So you have demographic information about their socioeconomic information about their age and other aspects of them. So it's not just a listing of crashes. There is a ton of information in the FARS system. And this was, again, developed in partnership with Congress and DOT a long time ago so that things like this could be done in the future to see the benefits of the progress over time of transportation safety. And again, this is a publicly available data set, and many, many transportation engineering studies have used this data set. Next slide, please. Just to give a sense before I show the results of some of the slight adaptations to the data set that we did given the goal of the study. So if you think of driving in the summer between states, you're going to go from, I live in Pennsylvania, and say I'm driving to South Carolina or Georgia. I'm going to travel through multiple states. I may have an accident that happens along the way. And if crashes happen in states where vehicles aren't originally from, it can cause problems in trying to associate the protective benefits of a safety inspection program for all vehicles involved. So to at least narrow our focus, to ensure that we were able to focus on those within state sort of aspects, we narrowed the crash data set for each year to just crashes that happened where all the vehicles involved were passenger vehicles. We took away highway trucks and stuff also because they're going to be traveling between multiple states and maybe apportioned. And all the vehicles involved were registered in the state where the accident occurred. Right? So what you don't have is we have a crash that happened in Virginia with a car from Pennsylvania and a car from Maryland. How are we going to try to tease out all the differences? So again, we narrowed it. And as you can see that in the sort of heat map, the geographic heat map there, that not very many records were removed as a result of that. So we still have more than 80% of the fatal crashes included when you consider that. It's not a very big constraint on what we did. Next slide, please. The other thing that the study did, and I'm treating at a very high level, is we didn't just look at the safety inspections and the crash fatality results. We also included information on many other commonly considered transportation safety variables, such as the number of registered vehicles in the state, the existence of that safety inspection in the state, ages of the drivers and vehicles, the fractions of crashes in that state that came from speeding or DUI, which are things that are coded in that FARS database, as well as economic measures such as GDP and income, the percentage of the VMT in those states that are on rural roads, a small number of these things. So again, this isn't a study that was focused only on total number of crashes and whether a state did or didn't have an inspection program. Many other things were treated and considered in the statistical model that was done. Next slide, please. Just for completeness, and so that everyone understands what the actual measure was, is what we were looking at and studying in this model was the adjusted annual fatality rate, where the fatality rate is the number of roadway fatalities coming out of that FARS database for each state, divided by a normalized number of registered vehicles per 100,000 population. So for each state, for every year in that 44-year study, we have found what that adjusted annual fatality rate is. And what we have done as the main focus in the statistical model that was done is to treat whether that state did or did not have a safety inspection program in existence in that year. So I remind you back to that sharp graphic that I showed on my slide 2 that states that Pennsylvania's had a safety program for the entire time, so it has a 1 all the time. Some states added or removed programs during the time. So this is how the model is considering the emergence or disappearance of those programs over time. So that we can, again, associate the effects of that program at those times. Next slide, please. And just to remind you, and this is not going to turn into a statistics lecture, I promise that this was a we were making a statistical model, not simply finding the adjusted fatality rates, right? If we just wanted to do that equation from the previous slide, you could do that and be done in about a couple of hours. But instead, we were trying to go beyond that, right? We were trying to build statistical models, right? We didn't want to just find the average. We didn't want to just find the minimums and maximums. We wanted to go deeper. Next slide, please. And so we were building regression models, which are common in statistics, which are trying to fit the data in the best possible way. We can use various measures to analyze how well the model fits, how the line that comes out of the model fits all of the data. And we can, for example, say, well, this model fits really well. So it's certainly an iterative process. We were trying to do the best job given all the different data sets and variables available. Next slide, please. And of course, in the end, what we wanted to do was aim for having statistically significant results. We didn't want to just say the average is higher or the average is lower. When we talk about statistical significance, we're talking about using the statistical method, the theory of statistical method that allows us to say, is this number different than this number? Yes or no? And in general, what we're going to be trying to find when it comes to looking at the effect of these safety inspection programs is whether that effect was 0 or not, right? Whether there was no effect, or whether there was an effect. And that allows us to come up with robust and interesting results to be able to say, you can just find a bunch of averages, we built this model, and we will have confidence intervals and ranges in the result. And I forgot to say the last bullet point for those of you who are the statistics junkies. What we did, that we can talk more about if needed, was we had this big 44-year chemical data set, used a fixed effects regression model where the treatment variable was the presence of these ions. Next slide, please. So getting to the results and just talking through them a bit now. And there is a white paper that's been made available. Full study is of course available for those who are interested. But if the aim is to mitigate road fatalities, these inspection maintenance programs work. Right? The main result, the top line, so to speak, in terms of looking at the effect of that presence of the safety inspection program, is that on average across all states, across that 44-year time period, states with inspection and maintenance programs had 5.5% fewer fatalities. I just want to talk through that for 30 seconds. As I said, we use a statistical model. We have a range of numbers that can potentially come out of the model where 5.5% is the expected value, or what you would expect that number to be. But it could be as high as almost 11% fewer. It could be as low as only 0.5% fewer. What's important though is to see that the model doesn't ever think it's not beneficial, right? It's always negative, it's not 0. And for context, right, the first slide I showed had sort of green and black wheel of the small percentage of states that had safety inspection programs. Those programs are already getting that benefit, so to speak, of 5.5% fewer fatalities. So if we apply the knowledge of 5.5% fewer fatalities and thinking about there's 40,000 total fatal crashes per year, and give those other 35 states the sort of benefit of those programs, that would tell you that you would save about 1,400 lives per year, using 2018 as the basis, which is the last year that we did in the study. That's not a negligible number. That's a large number that would lead to huge benefits. One thing, just two other things just to sort of point out. I mentioned that this was a study focused on fatal crashes. We see FAR's database to do that. We did not at all consider non-fatal crashes, of which I said there are 6 million of them. Other literature already does show, as you might guess, that there are similar effects and benefits in non-fatal crashes, but this study did not do that. And just to say quickly why, there isn't a national, consistent state-level database for non-fatal crashes, right? There is a national sample data set, but you can't do a state-level analysis. You can do a national level, not state-level analysis, so you couldn't do the same thing. And then the last point, which was hinted at during the panel discussion, is that when you think of the kinds of things that are being inspected in these periodic inspections that happen in these states, and that we would hope that happen in more states, the emerging use of technologies in automated vehicles and in non-automated vehicles that are getting some of these technologies, such as level 1 and level 2 systems, these also are things that likely should be inspected in some way. Not just the time of purchase and development of that vehicle, but over time to see if they're still working in the same way as they should have been and would have been at the time of sale. So these are also something to be considered in terms of looking at how these programs could be improved to additionally save lives. Next slide. Just wanted to note the sources. Peter mentioned that CITA was a partial funder of this study just to ensure that we got working, got data and other things together. They were not the only funder of the study. I just wanted to be clear that the PhD student, Christy Achari, who was listed on the title slide, received additional support from many other entities within Carnegie Mellon University, as well as the university's transportation center that's funding from the USDOT. Just wanted to be clear about that. Next slide, just. So thank you. I'll turn it back over to Peter from that.
So a couple of quick things. One, the white paper on the study is right here. So if you get up and leave, please grab it. It's right in front of Maddie. But this is the time for question and answers for Dr. Matthews on the study itself, or any of us on the panel. Questions?
We know we have some that came in late, and Dr. Matthews and Peter will still be here to visit, go over some of this with, the security line is a little long.
But please take a copy. It's a one-page white paper before you leave. Yes.
I heard a couple of mentions of level 1, level 2. What does that mean?
Automobile engineers, or SAE, also has classified autonomous vehicle systems into 5 levels. And these 5 levels are characterized by increasing levels of sophistication, with 5 being completely autonomous. You can take it back in the back of the seat. Level 1 is some of the current systems that are on vehicles today, like backup cameras. And we're starting to see level 2 automated braking started to take root. I think in 2023, all of those vehicles manufactured in the United States will have automatic braking systems on them. So these are obviously becoming more and more common over time. I actually have a question regarding some of the safety data since 2018. I think I've read some articles about how there have been increases in highway fatality levels. Have you had any sense of the data since 2018 and whether or not this gap is widening between the states with and without the safety program?
Yeah. So just to be clear, the study that we just talked about ended with the year 2018. It is true, and part of the reason we didn't go beyond that was ours data set changed a little bit, and we don't have to redo a bunch of stuff just to do one last year of 2019. The point being, we all know 2020 changed dramatically, and transportation was not really the same in that year. Right? So there's months where nobody was driving, and then months where people were driving way too fast, et cetera. Fatal crash rates as a function of miles driven went up in, I believe, both 2020 and 2021. I'm not positive about that, but I'm pretty sure that's true. So the trends have been unexpected and interesting because, generally speaking, fatality rates have been going down. People think that people just being out and less traffic on roads and people driving faster, but people people being out on roads and driving faster with potentially unsafe vehicles is not a good thing. But those are sort of some of the trends that have been seen. And again, we just didn't start extending the study past that because we were worried about trying to deal with all of the big changes in the way people were driving their cars in 2020 and 2021.
May I make a comment? Sure. I think Scott briefly mentioned the future of vehicles. And if you think about automated autonomous driving vehicles in the future, if we are giving responsibility from the driver to the vehicle, I'm convinced that vehicle inspection is becoming even more important than today. And if automated or autonomous driving vehicle should compete with the driver, it will lose today. So the driver is the best we have today to guide, to drive a vehicle. But in the future, it will change. So in the future, we will have to focus more on the vehicle and the safety and security issues of the vehicle than today, getting their proper safety program and inspection program could really benefit to reduce fatalities in the future.
Yes.
As you were looking at the data, did you take into account that not all state inspection programs are created equal, that you're going to have more robust programs in states like Pennsylvania and Virginia, and we have other states that have programs?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And just to give her, add a little bit to make her mentions. And I will do my best, and if Peter or Andy thinks I mischaracterize it, please say so. It is definitely true that not all state inspection programs, state safety inspection programs of vehicles are created equal. I don't want to go on record as naming states for that. I live in Pennsylvania, where the framework of what is supposed to be inspected has a pretty long list. Those inspections are done locally in small, stations in lots of places that also do the repairs. There are states with smaller targeted lists of items on vehicles to be inspected, and they may be done at a centralized place that only inspects. And then if you probably go and get fixed and come back. But back to the original question, right? So that definitely exists. We attempted to try to, I mentioned that it was either 0 if you didn't have a program or 1 if you did have a program. There were versions of the model that we were trying to do that sort of put it on a 0 to 1 spectrum, right? And frankly, not much different was coming out. And the main problem was effectively, how are we going to put that number on the 0 to 1 scale, right? So if a program in a state is really robust and happens every year and is really, really rigid, that should be a 1. If you don't have a program, it's a 0, but what's a 0.2 and what's a 0.5, right? So that became very challenging, and while we did, as I say, try to do it, we were worried that there was way too much judgment and bias in trying to do that. And again, the results were not coming out dramatically different on top of that. So hope that answers your question, but it's a perfect question. I'm really
to follow up with some information on the different states. If you went back to the presentation that Gerhard had, you saw what is usually done in other countries. And there's equipment that actually does testing of the vehicles. In the US, the majority of the states only do a visual inspection. It really isn't as sophisticated as other countries. I'm sorry, there was another question. Yes.
I want to build on this a little bit in a little different way. And forgive me if I'm fairly new in this area, but it seems to me that there's a correlation versus causation issue here. And how do you deal with causation of the accident, be it driver error or mechanical / safety in the study?
Yep, good question. So you're right that any statistical analysis has the potential for having, is it caused or is it just correlated? So first of all, happy to make the entire study available, which has pages and pages of discussion of how we tried to use an additional 2-page least squares model to show the causation, right? So I was worried about boring everybody to death by putting all those things up. But I believe we were able to, with that additional analysis, which I did not show here, but could talk more later about, that there is a stronger causation effect. The The connection, though, that remains, even if you're not sufficiently convinced about causation from the overall results that I said, is don't forget that the model didn't just say safety inspection program, fatality rate. All those other things were, all those other variables were part of the model. And the fit of that model is trying to navigate through all of those and still say, despite all those other things, rural roads, speeding, age, this factor of whether that program existed or not was still highly significant. So I'm happy to keep talking, including offline if you'd like, but it's obviously always a question. But the additional analysis done in the broader study that's not summarized in that one slide, I believe does make a compelling argument for the causation, that the presence of those programs is a causative factor in that 5.5% decrease. Great question. Causal factor, I should say, sorry.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for your attention. Certainly, anybody that does have a question, you want to come up and talk to us privately, that's fine. And please pick up a white paper. It's only one sheet, and it's pretty much for layman's terms. But if you do actually want the full study, that's available.
And would the slides be available as well?
Yeah, we can make them available. Sure.
I can put
Michelle will be around in a while, questions you can ask one-on-one, but that answer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Yes.
And, yeah.